When Sandra Bullock walks into Café Lumière, she's just looking to enjoy a quiet cup of coffee. But this isn't your everyday coffee shop, it's a playground for the elite, where exclusivity trumps hospitality. Clad in her casual blue hoodie and black cap, Sandra doesn't fit the VIP mold, and the manager, Richard, makes that abundantly clear. What he doesn't realize is that he's just turned away one of Hollywood's most beloved actresses, and he has no inkling of who's about to step through that door next. In just a few minutes, his meticulously curated world of luxury is going to begin to crumble, and there'll be no turning back. Before we dive deeper into this unfolding drama, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and if you love stories like this, make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow, we've got another exclusive tale just for you. Los Angeles was known for its glittering array of luxurious establishments, each vying for a spot in the city's glamorous landscape. Yet among all these elite destinations, Café Lumière stood apart, a singular beacon of exclusivity nestled deep in the heart of Beverly Hills. The café was not merely a place to grab a cup of coffee. It was a statement, a symbol of refined taste and elevated status. With its sleek marble counters that gleamed under soft lighting, golden chandeliers that sparkled with every subtle movement, and an atmosphere charged with quiet superiority, every element of Café Lumière was carefully designed to whisper to its guests, "You belong here." The establishment's reputation was built not just on its premium brew, but on the idea that only the chosen few could secure a table. Movie stars, CEOs, and influential socialites made it a point to reserve a seat weeks in advance, treating an evening at Café Lumière almost like a private club membership. For the average person, even catching a glimpse of its pristine interior was like looking into a fantasy world, a world where the ordinary was forever barred from entry. On one particular day, as the California sun dipped low and bathed the city in a warm, golden glow, Sandra Bullock found herself approaching the grand entrance of Café Lumière. Sandra, an unassuming yet quietly confident woman, was dressed in a simple black cap pulled low over her forehead, a comfortable blue hoodie, and well-worn sweatpants. To passers-by, she looked like any everyday person on her way to run errands or grab a quick coffee. Her casual attire was in stark contrast to the meticulously curated wardrobe of the regular patrons of the café. As Sandra neared the entrance, her steps carried a mix of casual ease and a hint of determination, an air of someone who had spent years navigating the labyrinth of Hollywood's elite circles. Yet today, she was here not as a revered insider but as a woman whose appearance did not fit the pristine mold that the café's management demanded. Unbeknownst to her, this would become a turning point in an evening already steeped in irony and unfolding drama. Inside, Richard, the self-assured manager of Café Lumière, was busy overseeing his domain. With a hawk-like gaze, he took pride in knowing that every guest who entered the café had met his strict criteria of sophistication. Richard's discerning eyes had been finely tuned to spot any deviation from his carefully constructed image of exclusivity. So when he caught sight of Sandra, her hoodie, cap, and casual sweatpants, they screamed, "Does not belong here." His lips curled into a disapproving smirk as he watched her step toward the grand entrance. Just as Sandra's hand reached for the ornate handle of the door, a firm hand shot out to block her path. "I'm sorry, ma'am," Richard said, his tone cool and clipped, "but this café caters to a selective clientele. Perhaps you'd prefer the coffee shop down the street." His words were delivered with the air of someone who believed that the rules of exclusivity were absolute, leaving no room for exception. Sandra paused, blinking in mild surprise. In her many years of experience with upscale establishments, she had rarely encountered someone who would refuse her entry outright. Yet here she was, denied not for any overt misconduct, but for the very fabric of her attire. Keeping her voice light and steady, she smiled softly. "I'm sure there's a table for you." Richard's laugh was small and self-satisfied. With his arms folded and a critical glance over the impeccably dressed clientele inside, he reiterated, "We only serve VIP guests here. This place isn't for just anyone." His tone was laced with a hint of amusement, as if he were reciting a well-known mantra rather than enforcing a discriminatory. Though Sandra's smile never faltered, inside she felt a subtle shift, a mixture of disappointment and a quiet resolve. She had spent years moving from Hollywood's glittering elite, yet she had never been judged solely by the cut of her clothing. Today, her ordinary attire was being used as a yardstick to measure her worth. She was not angry at this moment, but a deep-seated disappointment simmered beneath the surface. Outside, as she lingered by the entrance with her hands tucked casually in her hoodie pockets and the brim of her cap casting a shadow over her eyes, Sandra appeared as any everyday person might. The irony was thick. The very exclusivity that defined Café Lumiere did not intimidate her. It was a world she had witnessed from both inside and outside. In grander places where influential people gathered, she had seen power and vulnerability intertwined. Yet here, she was being dismissed by a manager who had prejudged her worth solely by her appearance. Richard, ever the gatekeeper, regarded her as an inconvenience. "Look, lady," he said dismissively, "I don't know if you're lost, but this cafe isn't for everyone." Sandra raised an eyebrow in response, her tone cool and measured. "Is that so?" she replied, her voice laced with gentle irony. Richard smiled deeply. "Yes, we have a very exclusive clientele. Reservations are made weeks in advance," he explained, pausing to let his words sink in. With another pointed look at her casual outfit, he added, "We have a certain standard here." Sandra tilted her head slightly, her smile remaining steady. "Let me guess, I don't meet your standard?" she inquired softly, her words both challenging and calm. Richard chuckled, clearly enjoying this brief exchange. "Exactly," he said. "People who know people don't show up in hoodies and baseball caps." A few of the well-dressed customers inside shared amused glances, their hushed chuckles a testament to the unspoken hierarchy they all endorsed. After a moment of silence, Sandra's calm demeanor did not waver. Instead, she observed Richard intently, a calm, unreadable expression that, unbeknownst to him, was beginning to unsettle his own confident composure. "How about I just order a coffee to go?" she suggested finally, her tone matter-of-fact yet edged with quiet defiance. Richard's eyebrows arched in mild amusement. "Our coffee isn't exactly for everyone," he replied, his voice dripping with condescension. Sandra nodded slowly, as if weighing his words, then, with deliberate calm, asked, "So, what exactly makes your coffee so special?" Leaning in with an air of arrogance, Richard explained, "It's all about the experience, the exclusivity, and the carefully curated clientele. It's not merely a beverage, it's a statement." His gaze flickered once more to her attire, as if to drive home the point that she was an anomaly in his refinement. Sandra listened, her eyes reflecting both interest and an unspoken challenge. "Interesting," she finally replied, her tone soft yet layered with meaning. Richard, convinced of his own superiority, had no inkling that the events about to unfold would soon expose the cracks in his grand facade. Meanwhile, at a small table just outside the cafe, a group of well-dressed socialites observed the interaction with keen interest. Among them sat Tiffany Lale, a blonde influencer known for her impeccable taste and condescending online persona. Clad in oversized designer sunglasses and an all-white outfit that screamed exclusivity, Tiffany's eyes lit up with mischief. In a few discreet movements, she snapped a photo of Sandra at the entrance and quickly posted it on her social media feed. The caption read, "Some woman in a hoodie is trying to force her way into Café Lumiere. Some places just aren't for everyone, babe." Within seconds, Tiffany's post began to attract attention. Likes, comments, and shares started pouring in, each reaction a mix of amusement and schadenfreude. Tiffany's perfectly manicured nails tapped on the table in satisfaction, as she took pleasure in the idea that confidence alone could not override rigid total. To her, Sandra's attempt to blend in was both entertaining and a reminder of how easily some people can be judged by appearances. As the comments continued to roll in, however, the tone of the conversation began to shift. Members of the online community started to recognize the woman in the photo. One comment read, "Wait, isn't that Sandra Bullock, the movie geek?" followed by another exclamation. "Oh my God, Tiffany, you just posted about a Hollywood legend, Sandra Bullock." Soon, a chorus of voices urged, "Sandra, please delete this before you embarrass yourself. She's an Oscar-winning actress." Tiffany froze, her smile faltering as she stared at the screen. The realization dawned on her that she had inadvertently exposed one of Hollywood's most beloved figures. Slowly, her eyes lifted, taking in Sandra's calm and confident presence as if seeing her for the first time. Sandra's striking features, the sharp jawline, the natural beauty, and the quiet strength of her eyes, commanded respect. In that moment, Tiffany's face drained of color, and she understood that she had crossed the line. Back inside, the atmosphere atmosphere in Café Lumière grew increasingly tense. Richard, having entertained a brief exchange with Sandra, finally decided that the matter was closed. "I've entertained this long enough," he declared, crossing his arms with a finality that brooked no argument. "I'm afraid I have to ask you to leave. We don't serve just anyone here." His tone was cold, and the finality in his words left no room for negotiation. Sandra sighed quietly and lowered her gaze for a moment. After a brief pause, she nodded in acceptance and turned away, walking toward the exit without another word. Inside, the cafe buzzed with whispers. Some guests grinned in approval, while others exchanged glances that hinted at discomfort. Richard exhaled with a sense of satisfaction, firmly believing that he had upheld the establishment's standards. Yet, he remained oblivious to the fact that his decision was about to trigger events that would unravel the very fabric of his carefully maintained world. Outside, the unfolding drama did not end with Sandra's quiet departure. Just around the corner, as the evening light deepened into a cool twilight, another figure began to approach. A young waiter, busy refilling a guest's water glass, suddenly paused. His eyes widened, and his hand trembled as he noticed something unexpected on the sidewalk. The older waiter, catching his whispered alarm, also turned to see what had captured their attention. Cutting through the growing crowd with a calm yet determined gait was none other than Keanu Reeves. Dressed in a tailored black blazer paired with worn jeans that hinted at effortless style, Keanu moved with a quiet determination that immediately commanded respect. His presence was magnetic. Pedestrians gasped, phones were raised, and people stopped mid-step to witness the arrival of a Hollywood icon. Inside the cafe, the ripple of excitement was instantaneous. Tiffany Lale's face drained in color, her earlier amusement now replaced by a stark realization of the gravity of the moment. She had mocked Sandra, and now Keanu Reeves was here, turning the tide again. As Richard continued to prattle on about the cafe's exclusive policies, his words were drowned out by the probable shift in the air. In one seamless motion, the door swung open with a gentle chime of the bell, and Keanu stepped inside. An almost palpable silence fell over the room, as if every guest, every staff member, had collectively paused to take in the surreal sight. Richard's confident composure faltered for a moment as he caught sight of Keanu, his breath momentarily stolen. Why was Keanu Reeves, a symbol of unpretentious excellence and understated power, coming straight for his cafe? Before Richard could recover, Keanu had already bypassed him, walking purposefully toward the back of the cafe where Sandra had just settled at a small outdoor table. Sandra, who had been contemplating her next move, couldn't help but smile as she noticed Keanu approaching. The irony was not lost on her. A day that had begun with unwarranted exclusion was about to take an unexpected, transformative turn. "Hey, Sandy," Keanu greeted warmly as he reached her table. His voice carried the familiar cadence of a longtime friend, and for a brief moment, the tension of the earlier confrontation melted away into genuine camaraderie. Sandra's face lit up with a smile that mingled surprise and relief. "Hey, Keanu, fancy seeing you here," she replied, her tone light yet filled with unspoken understanding. Richard, still standing near the entrance, watched this exchange with growing horror. His carefully maintained world of exclusivity was suddenly under threat, and as he witnessed the undeniable connection between Keanu and Sandra, his confidence began to crumble. Keanu took a seat across from Sandra, his eyes never leaving the dismayed manager. "It's been too long since we had coffee together," he remarked, his voice gentle yet carrying an unmistakable note of reverence. Sandra's smile remained playful as she added, "I tried getting in, but apparently, this place is very exclusive." The remark was delivered with a calm self-assurance that only deepened the irony of the situation. Keanu's expression shifted, the warmth in his smile softening as he turned his attention to Richard. The manager's face was now flushed with anxiety, sweat beading at his temples as he stuttered. "And Mr. Reeves, I didn't realize. I mean, we do have policies." Keanu's eyes narrowed slightly, and his voice, calm but edged with an unmistakable authority, cut through the murmur of the cafe. "If Sandra isn't your friend, then you would have continued treating her as if she wasn't good enough to be here, wouldn't you?" His words were measured yet carried a weight that resonated with everyone present. A hush fell over the cafe as a nearby guest murmured to another, "If they treat Sandra Bullock like that, imagine how they treat regular people." A businessman sitting near the window abruptly stood up. hastily deleted her post and stowed her device away, but it was too late. The damage had already been done. Richard's phone buzzed incessantly, and with trembling hands, he pulled it out. A message from the owner of Café Lumière glowed ominously on the screen. "You're fired. Pack your things and leave immediately." In that heart-stopping moment, Richard felt his world collapse around him. The café, his reputation, and the carefully constructed barrier between the elite and the ordinary were gone in an instant. For Sandra, however, the night was taking on a different hue. As she sat there with Keanu, the events of the evening had transformed from a minor inconvenience into a profound statement on the nature of true exclusivity. It wasn't about designer labels or pretense. It was about the authenticity of connections, the recognition of inherent worth, and the quiet dignity of those who refuse to be defined by superficial standards. Keanu's calm demeanor and quiet authority had not only exposed Richard's narrow-minded policies, but it also resonated with the guests who had been silently watching. The ripple effect was immediate. With each passing moment, more patrons trickled back into the cafe, drawn by the promise of fairness and genuine hospitality. The whispers of approval grew louder, mingling with the gentle clink of cups and the murmur of renewed conversation. Outside, as the night deepened and the cool breeze swept through the palm-lined streets of Beverly Hills, Sandra and Keanu sat together, sharing memories and quiet laughter over freshly brewed coffee. Their conversation, filled with anecdotes from Hollywood and reflections on what truly mattered in life, served as a gentle reminder that real worth was never measured by the price of one's clothes or the flashiness of one's lifestyle. It was about authenticity, kindness, and the courage to stand up against injustice, even in the seemingly trivial world of a high-end cafe. Richard, now a shadow of his former self, lingered near the entrance, watching as his world, built on outdated notions of exclusivity and superficial status, crumbled into irrelevance. The lesson was clear. A true establishment was defined not by its rejection of those who did not fit a certain image, but by its ability to welcome diversity, to embrace authenticity, and to serve all who came with genuine intent. In that moment, the downfall of Café Lumiere's old guard became a quiet celebration of a new era, one where true exclusivity was not about exclusion, but about elevating those who carried themselves with quiet dignity. As the evening drew on, and the once hushed murmur in the cafe transformed into lively, heartfelt conversation, the story of that fateful night began to weave itself into the tapestry. Sandra Bullock, who had once been judged for her simplicity, emerged not as a victim but as a symbol of resilience and authenticity, a reminder that sometimes the most unassuming individuals carry the strength of their entrenched hierarchies. And so, as the night sky lightened Los Angeles in a starry embrace, the lights of Café Lumière shone bright, reflecting the hope that perhaps, in this ever-changing world, true class was not enough for appearances or rich policies, but for the simple act of treating every human being with respect and genuine warmth. In that warm glow, Sandra and Keanu's quiet rebellion echoed far beyond the walls of the cafe, inspiring many to rethink what it truly meant to be exclusive in a world that was, at its heart, meant for everyone.